This is Talk Business and Politics with Roby Brock.
Joining me now, John Brummett, columnist with the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. Good to see you at the beginning of the week, sir.
Always a pleasure, Roby.
Let us begin with U.S. Senator John Boozman. He is getting a lot of national attention, at least in terms of political coverage. There's been an AP story that's run nationally. Politico had a big story on his race nationally because he is being challenged from the far right by Jake Beckett and Jan Morgan. What is your take on how John Boozman is navigating the primary waters that he is in right now?
I think John Boozman is navigating the primary waters by saying, Donald Trump is for me, Sarah Sanders is for me, Tom Cotton is for me. You all may not know much about me, but they're for me. And he's essentially saying that ought to be proof to you that I would be just as extreme as any of my extremist opponents. And he's endeavoring to lay out positions that are parallel, those of Beckett and Morgan and whoever the others are, or the other is. It's kind of I find it all pitiably desperate. Little sacrifice of self-respect, frankly, because Boozman's always been a perfectly nice gentleman who everybody liked, and managed to win just on the kind of guy he was in the face of all this wilder right Republican politics. A reliable vote for Mitch McConnell, a reliable colleague of Tom Cotton. But now he's just, he had two ads back to back on the news the other night that said over and over, flashed, endorsed by Donald Trump, endorsed by Donald Trump. And what's the story there? Politico broke the story that, you remember there was this surreptitious video. Somebody asked him a sweet question about whether Republicans ought to let the 2020 election go or continue to fight it. And they held a phone low and videotaped him, and he ended up saying, we got to let it go. He lost when the Electoral College says so, that was it. And then he said this idea he had that Trump had that Mike Pence could deliver the presidency to him. Well, that was just crazy. Then he went on to say the Democrats were as bad about trying to blame Russia for collusion for Trump's win in the first place. I suspected, and Politico reported, it's their report, that shortly after that, Boozman called Trump hat in hand, sorry, essentially to apologize for having been tricked into telling the truth. And that he had done so on the recommendation of certain persons close to Trump who told him he needed to do that. I nominate Sarah Sanders as the likeliest candidate to have done that. So it's he's just given himself over to others. He's running as just a willing puppet. He cites Tom Cotton's backing, Sanders' backing, and that seems desperate for Trump's backing, and to distance himself from having been caught telling the truth accidentally that time. And it's just I didn't know a Senate seat was that big a deal to him. I thought maybe he might have some life other than that, but it seems to be. So sorry, my dog just woke up. That's Sophie.
Dogs, it's good. Sophie's good. She's popular on social media.
She is. So that's how I see that, and it's all a sad spectacle. I believe you, not to go on too much, but this is important to our group. I believe. Tell me if I'm wrong. I think I read a quote from you in that political piece in which you said, "Did I?
You did.
Read
yes.
a book." Yeah, and you said that Boozman seems to be all right, but if we get to a runoff, all bets are off. Am I quoting your quote correctly, essentially?
It's an accurate representation of what I said.
And I think you just captured it, because people say, why is he so all in? Why is he all over the airways? Why does he appear so desperate? I think he and his people probably see it as you do. I can win this thing outright, and I really need to first go around. Because if we get down to a runoff with, say, this Beckett and this rich guy personally funding his campaign for this super PAC pours in another $1 million, and then Boozman is reliant on return voters when he's never been a person with a strong constituency himself, he just sort of wins in sort of a bland general way. I mean, I believe you're right. A runoff is an entirely different animal that puts him at great risk. And I almost hope we get to a runoff, almost, because I think we'll have a big rally here. And I think Sarah and Tom Cotton will do a big rally for Bozeman. And I want to know if Trump would come, because Trump apparently accepted his apology. A lot of racket going on in the background. Trump apparently accepted his apology, but does that mean he would come here and actually speak for him? Anyway, I'm getting well ahead of myself, but it's just it's quite a spectacle going on, and it could get more interesting as we move on.
You mentioned the John Bozeman tape and the apology reportedly to Donald Trump. Let's talk about Kevin McCarthy, who would be the House leader if the Republicans take back Congress.
Right.
Similar fate for him. What do you make of the Kevin McCarthy controversy?
I think Kevin McCarthy may have to. It's the same sort of dynamic as Bozeman. You get caught on tape by the authors of this forthcoming book. You get caught on saying something that people knew you thought in your heart, and at the time, in McCarthy's case, he was dealing with his U.S. Capitol, his domain being invaded by these wild criminals. And he was very angry at Trump, and he said so at the time, and he maintained a hard line on it for 2 or 3 days, and somebody was taping him, and it showed up in this book. He's ready to, he was done with Trump. But I think the Republican dynamic is such that people have worked it, that the conservative people have worked it out. It was too bad that those scruffy people did that, but it's been overstated as I'm giving you their view. It was overstated as an insurrection. It was just really bad behavior. Trump, bears responsibility for firing them up, but he didn't actually tell them to go do it. And it was bad, but let's move on. And secondly, this can all be worked out. It can all be overcome if you'll just now, in the present time, fall back into the Trump orbit, and because what matters is going forward. And I think McCarthy's going to go around the country and make some talks and profess his allegiance to Trump and weather this deal. And I think Bozeman, accidentally told the truth more recently about the election situation, but apparently, if Politico is to be believed, and if what we're to see on TV is to be believed, he called down to genuflected on the phone before Trump, and that's going to be okay too. I think it's all a rationalization by the right that can be played to by people. Lindsey Graham on the Senate floor the night of the insurrection, he said, "I'm so sorry. Trump and I have been close, but this cuts it for me." Well, it wasn't so. Nobody blames him now for saying that because he was overwrought at the time, and now we're moving on and the conservatives have rationalized all this away. So I think McCarthy could probably do that too.
We call that transactional politics. Don't we?
It's exactly transactional politics. It's entirely transactional politics. Yes.
Let's talk about Governor Asa Hutchinson's latest move. He is turning down some federal money that would provide for rental relief, rental assistance, particularly for people who have been struggling to make their rent payments. We're just not going to take all of the money there. And he's headed to New Hampshire, he reports, in the near future. Coincidence? Why would these two things be somehow linked, John?
This is an old story. I'll try to tell it in a fresh way. Asa Hutchinson has always had more personal interest in a national political profile than that for a long time I understood. I remember he was once. I said, "Why are you bothering to endorse Rubio in this primary, with our president's primary?" He said, "You want to be part of the national conversation." And he'd been in Washington. Mike Beebe, for example, was totally a parochial guy. All he wanted to be was governor, and that's all he thought about in the context of everything he did was governor. Asa's more nationally inclined, and I believe he's just positioning himself to be around the arena of presidential sweepstakes for 2024 as he watches what happens. Does Trump get in more trouble? Does it appear Trump is declining? Do the Trump imitators cancel each other out? Is there another path? I think he's just doing all that, and somebody's given him the opportunity to go. I believe it's tomorrow or later this week, to go to New Hampshire, to Manchester, to talk to the traditional eggs and politics breakfast of the New England something or other Business Council, and that's a presidential context speech, and so he's taking advantage of it, and he's positioning himself in that positioning. He needs to not be so moderate that he loses the Republican conservative imprimatur, sort of. And what he does with that is occasionally he'll emphasize the essential conservative nature of his politics, which is we didn't spend all this rent money when we got it in the first batch. We just didn't. Maybe it was our landlord's fault. Maybe it was our tenant's fault. Maybe it was both the faults. Maybe it's our fault. But we didn't. We don't need any more. And he saw an excellent opportunity to turn down some federal money, which is a popular thing to do. So he's calculating a sort of a loitering around the arena. He just wants to be around there. And he did say it last week, even though he's doing a sort of an official act somewhere in New Hampshire on this trip. He said the part about going to the New England Council to speak at that breakfast would not be paid for with public funds, which is to admit, yeah, it's political. So we got Asa hanging around, we got Tom Cotton hanging around. We produce presidential prospects down here with great regularity, like Ohio and Massachusetts.
Well, Governor Asa Hutchinson is no Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, who is embattled with Disney World right now. Could you imagine Asa Hutchinson or even a future governor taking on Walmart per se and trying to run them out of the state like DeSantis seems to be doing in Florida with Disney World?
No, I can't. I can't. And I don't think it would happen in Arkansas. We're needy and we're more proud, but I don't think we've signed over an entire governmental jurisdiction totally to Walmart, and that's the case with Disney World. And if Disney World wants to move to the Delta, and would, I think Arkansas would be willing to just sign over the territory to them. But here's the interesting thing about this. I remember not so long ago, although things I think happened not so long ago tend to be longer than I realized, when Democrats were the populists who railed against government allegiance to the corporations. What has happened with this Trump and now this new flavor, this DeSantis populism, is they've now taken that away. They are the one. See, and here's what's happened. Major corporations, there's been a major ideological shift. Major corporations have become woke. I use that in a broad sense, not a pejorative sense, but they tend to support progressive change in terms of social and cultural issues. Goes for Walmart, goes for Tyson. And so Democrats, and in Asa's case, a moderate Republican, ally with that at times. Our legislature, the right wing of our legislature, didn't care what Walmart said, and their form of populism is akin to the former Democratic liberal populism, and the whole thing is realigned, and it's a fascinating thing to watch. But the classic example is this DeSantis guy. He out-Trumps Trump on some of these things because this is a pretty bold move, and it may be that. But by taking back Disney World's control of its own territory, that the county is going to have to inherit all the debt, and it may not be an advantage for the taxpayers. So it may blow up on a balance sheet matter, on a balance sheet basis. But politically, it represents kind of a seismic shift in partisan political views toward corporations and the extent to which you oblige them.
Always something interesting to talk about, and our
Mhm.
mornings are filled with that. He's John Brummett, columnist with the Arkansas Democrat Gazette. Good to be with you as always.
Good to be with you. I'll see you next time. Thanks.